I'm trying a different method of recording because I find with my professional recording system, I move too much to have that particular microphone uh, always want to capture my voice as clearly as it has the capacity to do, because I don't stay within a few inches of that microphone. There's just no way. Years ago, when I was doing my presentations to the public, I used a lavalier mic because I was standing in front of a group where I had room to move. And one of my presentations afterwards, someone came up and said, "Wow, you are the lively astrologer." And it was like, at that point, I was like, of course I am. And the reason why is because I like to move when I'm actually in the process of doing the descriptions. And with the COVID thing right now and doing these recordings on my computer, sitting in a chair, it's like my movements are extremely limited. So I'll just do the best that I can, and part of the format for tonight, I'm be a little bit different. And this is the reason that I've got this different headphone microphone system on, is because I found that in doing part of the presentation, this is my fourth or fifth time that I've gone through it. The microphone, the professional microphone, would just, I couldn't get it to be constant enough. So let us begin. Celestial Chatter for February 7th through 13th. When forces arise that are beyond our normal capacities to grasp, we have entered the zone of mystery, the mysterious and the mystic. This is not generally brought up when Pluto comes to the table, and you'll see there's a reason why I'm bringing Pluto to the table. But my dreams of last evening began to spell out some interesting astrological matters that soon expanded well beyond just the field of celestial interaction. Every time we sit down to ponder any astrological chart, there before us is a potential mystery seeking clarity. As various planetary configurations crossed through this dreamscape, I was faced with options that I could make choices upon, but my perspective might have minimal relevance to someone else. The deeper I dove into these scenarios, the broader appeared the potential for more than just astrology to be an influence upon outcomes within each individual's world. Then, a wider context to these considerations appeared, asking to be inclusive of more than just the human element. As a matter of fact, influences as subtle as certain smells upon the winds and weather shifts were clamoring for inclusion in decisions. The deeper I probed, I was led to a statement, or was that a question, needing to be asked by anyone and at any time. Does this direction I have chosen enhance or distract from the building of community in any way? Also, who and how will the mysteries stirred affect those I interact with? A current mystery on the table would be Pluto's influence as it concludes its Capricorn adventure. It's been there since 2007, 2008. As an Aquarian, I might be inclined to either dread or get excited by the upcoming cyclic shift into my sign. A Libran, on the other hand, may give a sigh of relief to have Pluto move from a sign square to itself and into possibilities this upcoming trine aspect may spell for opportunity to ratify appropriate members of any group function it is a part of. The Cancerian archetype may as well breathe a bit easier with possibly fewer potential partners seeking to turn their home fronts into some form of business structure they could utilize in some level of co-creative endeavors. Should turn the chart on for today so we could take a look at that. There we go. If you look at the chart, you can see, I'm off script now, the Mars and Uranus are bookends of a trine aspect, 10 degrees Capricorn, 10 degrees of Taurus. And all the planets are essentially traveling within this matrix. Trines are opportunity that function well, and the reason why is because at either end of a trine are the same element. In this case, it's Earth. So practicality is on the table. Take a good look at this chart because I'm going to basically expand the parameters of how when I'm looking at charts, I want to know who is talking to who and what are they saying? In other words, what is the conversation about? Are they being cordial to one another or are they being challenging? Are there challenges in what it is that they have to offer to each other? So we're going to basically stop the share of the chart. And I'm going to put up a version of astrology that I use all the time. Let's see if we can get it to a point where I can actually see it at the same time. This is known as a dispositor tool. And I use it, I've been using it ever since the beginning of the 70s when I discovered it, is that, and this is based on the modern rulerships of the planets. As you can see, looking at this, where's my pointer? That we have essentially, there's two parts to this pattern. It's a split pattern. You kind of see the snaky thing I put down through the middle. And on this side, the pattern is known as a circle of infinity, in that this yellow circle that goes around in here, I'm having a hard time thinking backwards here, means that anything within that circle, which are the three planets, Saturn, Uranus, and Venus, when anything comes into our world for consideration, that has to do with everything except for the Neptune, Jupiter over here in Pisces, but all the other planetary signatures, when anything shows up, this circle of infinity right here with the Saturn, Uranus, and Venus is triggered immediately and simultaneously. There is no way to separate easily or effectively Venus energy, Saturn energy, and Uranus energy. Just for an example, let's say that someone asks you a question and it has to do with, how are you getting along with so-and-so? And you say, okay, that's a question that has to do with partnership relationship matters. So what I want to look at is I want to look at Venus, because Venus is about, how we interact with other people. And, we can see right off the bat, our moon, how we feel in Taurus, which, by the way, we'll get back to the chart, but the moon is just about caught up with a exact conjunction with Uranus. But the Venus, Venus is in Capricorn. So my considerations or my thoughts that come up when someone asks me about this other particular person is, I'm kind of going, Capricorn. I need to look at this practically because Capricorn's an earth sign and the earth signs are all practical. The moon feeding in it is in Taurus, more practicality, feeds up to Saturn as, being the energy that this Venus is feeding into, because Saturn is the ruler of Capricorn, where Venus is. Saturn's in Aquarius. So in that case, how does the Saturnian practicality play out? Well, it plays out in Aquarian fashion, and I would go, okay, I've just added into this consideration of this person that someone's asking me about, do they fit in an Aquarian fashion into the matrix of the group of those kinds of people I enjoy hanging with, the people that I can count on to be a stimulation to the further development of group energy. That's Aquarius. And Saturn says, I will be the bones and structure of that group. And then Saturn says, oh, I'm in Aquarius. I need to query into Uranus to see what Uranus has to add into this conversation. Well, what Uranus adds in there is it's in Taurus, so Uranus says, I hope that this person that you are considering has at least a little quirkiness to them, because hey, after all, it's Aquarius and Uranus. But at the same time, it's in Taurus. So they need to, besides being, a little practical, they need to have some kind of an affinity with their position as being a member of humanity in connection with the natural world, because Taurus is planet Earth. It is nature. And so the question has been asked, how's it going with this person? Immediately, you get this trio of considerations in play that are, touching all those different avenues of what that person might represent instantaneously. And when you look at these other planets, we have four planets in Capricorn. We have the Venus, which we've already talked about. We got Mercury, how we communicate and talk, wants to be practical. It's in Capricorn. And by the way, it has just stopped being retrograde and is moving back to a more dynamic and stronger connection with Pluto, who is as well in Capricorn. And Mars is up here in Capricorn. Mars is still out of bounds. It will be out of bounds until the 12th. So it has a little bit of a quirky kind of a quality to it. It isn't necessarily going to go out of its way to be inclined to fit into the structures that most people are comfortable with. All that energy, these four Saturnian planets or Capricornian planets are feeding into that Saturn. So if someone asks you about your communication touches the Saturn, which immediately engages the Venus and the Uranus energies. Or if they want to go into the deep things like what we're going to be talking about tonight, Pluto, it immediately triggers those two things. The sun, that vital energy source that, sparks us into our beingness, is in Aquarius. So it's of course naturally going to feed into the Uranus. And as such, that dynamic vitality of life touches into this trine and says, okay, we asked that question about if they were asking about, oh yeah, my birthday was recently, so I'm an Aquarius. I'm bringing that Aquarius essence into this question. Anyway, that's a circle of infinity, how it works. But because we have a split pattern here, we have this other side, which is the Piscean side, which Jupiter and Neptune are both in. Jupiter is the traditional ruler of Pisces. Neptune is a planet that has a very strong affinity with the Piscean flavor. And so anything that has to do with Jupiter or Neptune, what it lands in, it doesn't necessarily touch this part of us, but what it's doing is it's considering how deep do you want to go in your investigation of what it means to be in tune with the core reality of the most profound and deepest part of your connection to source. This is essential Pisces. We'll go back to our chart now. Okay, more reading. Mars, remember, Mars is up here at the top of the chart. Mars factors jumped into the cauldron as it is still traversing out of bounds until the 12th. The drive factor to be initiatory may still be willing to be contained, it may still not be willing to be contained within certain sets of rules others consider appropriate. Mars, the god of war, is likely thrilled by the global war drums beating more vigorously. Exalted in Capricorn, those in authority may not actually realize how close to conflict the precipice of many, not just soldiers' lives, currently are. But then one must ask, what are the objectives of those who have been placed in or assumed positions of leadership in the world these days? Then there's the Venus factor, currently as well in Capricorn, that brings up considerations of relationship partnership, the Libra side, as well as resources and valuation, the Taurus side. Mars and Venus are beginning a relatively longer conjunction aspect than is usual through the rest of February as they work their way through Capricorn and then on into Aquarius while remaining relatively close to each other. Where do the tentacles of this pairing touch in the current astrological matrix? There's a square to Chiron in Aries that Mars is forming. Mars, as we've already exclaimed, is exalted in Capricorn, but it's out of bounds. Chiron in Aries is one of the signs that's ruled by Mars. This is a square aspect, so you would think that normally what square aspects indicate is some tension that exists, and part of the reason for that is that the elements, in this case, Mars is in Earth and Chiron is in fire, and fire and Earth don't generally they don't generally work cohesively together. Think of that volcano that's erupting behind me. There's fire and earth. So you can kind of picture, there might be a little tension there. In this case, because Mars is the ruler of Aries, I think the tension factor could be alleviated somewhat. Also, the fact that Mars is out of bounds and so has essentially, it's not drawn into that extreme earthy kind of energy as much as it would be once it comes back in bounds. So we have to kind of wonder now, how is that driving Martian energy going to inspire Chiron to take the steps necessary that it needs to do in order to effectively initiate appropriate healing matters in a way that will be beneficial? Let's consider Chiron. Chiron is the wounded healer. And the first wounds that Chiron received was the fact that after he was born, possibly during his birth, his mom was, seeing a being come out of her. She was in horse form at the time, as part horse and part human, and made the instant call: too ugly. I don't want to have anything to do with it. And a lot of the images that you see of Chiron are of a centaur galloping around with a top half of a human body for its head part, head and neck part of its thing. Whereas I think Jason Hawley, probably pointed out a factor that a lot of astrologers aren't aware of, and that is that the correct image for Chiron is that he also had the front legs of a human, legs and feet of a human. So he didn't quite have that, gazelle-ish quality of being able to gallop and gallivant around with the rest of the centaurs. He was a lot more plodding. So he had some issues there to deal with. And his dad, Zeus, who basically was just out having a good time and decided to mount, I think her name was Philyra, the demigod, and created Chiron. And his response when he offered the opportunity, because Philyra didn't want anything to do with Chiron, too ugly. Chiron says, I'm the king of the gods. I haven't got any time to deal with Chiron. Therefore, what Chiron's experienced, he was essentially abandoned by his parents. That is one of the first injuries or wounds that Chiron experienced. And as far as all the rest of us, wherever Chiron sits in the chart, it's highly likely that there are functions related to that particular sign and house where Chiron is that are being played out through your parental, through your parents, that aren't exactly on the best wavelength for what it is that you might be most comfortable with. Anyway, Chiron, the key that I would like to focus on is he's a healer, and he, for whatever reason, he became a healer. He was also instructed in the healing things. He investigated lots of different healing techniques to be able to heal a wound that he had, not the wound of being abandoned by his parents, but another one, being wounded in his thigh by a hydro blood-tipped arrow that basically, since he was a demigod as well, could not heal from and was excruciatingly painful. So he basically, not being able to gallivant around with the rest of the centaurs, dwelled in his cave and studied medicine and healing techniques and herbal remedies and stuff, trying everything he could to get rid of that pain in his leg, which he couldn't. But he became so proficient in his art of medicinal healing things that he was basically had pupils sent to him from around the mythic world to study and learn a lot of the medicinal techniques that are still in use to this day. Unfortunately, big pharma doesn't really pay as much attention to the natural herbal healing capacities that were taught back then, because they're still just as relevant today as they ever have been. Anyway, there's a little side trip into the Chiron things. And so Mars begins the week as one of the bookends, which I talked about before, the other one being Uranus down there in Taurus. So this closed trine is short-lived as the moon passes by Uranus around midday on Monday. The fact Mars is holding hands with Venus adds energy to this duo to enhance the early phases of the current 1.7-year journey of the lunar nodes. And in Taurus and Scorpio, where they are the sign rulers of this destiny pair. And perhaps I'll read the sentence and then we'll get into the explanation. Perhaps the distance between what was and what seeks to be born, what was South Node and what seeks to be born North Node, is narrowed a bit, or possibly that gap never really was as wide as some might have us believe. The reason I say that is because the South Node is it's a representation. This is the lunar South Node, by the way, a representation of an energy signature of a substance that we have perfected. We have really done work in that area, and it doesn't require a lot from us to be able to present that kind of a perspective that the South Node represents. And right now, the South Node is in Scorpio. So we could say that from a Scorpio perspective, and this applies to all of us right now. This is an energy that's at work. The awareness of intimate and intense interaction with others is not something that requires a lot of extra energy on our parts to be able to grasp, to grok, because it is currently on the table in that zone where the work has already been done, and it's not required to delve into or apply too much more energy into that zone in order to be able to utilize it. North Node, on the other hand, is opposite that, down in Taurus, and as such, it sits there as like it's an opportunity, and as such, it will become, I was going to say excited, but yeah, I kind of picture the nodes being excited, but I'm going to say it gets excited when we actually touch the hem of its garment. And because it's in Taurus, when we show interest in what it means to actually be a functional part of Mother Nature and understand our connection to that resource base on more than just seeing it as an opportunity to extract and lord over in a control fashion that does not give back unto Mother Nature, doesn't recognize the recycling nature of everything. That North Node, which is ruled by the Venus, says if we are willing to partner with Mother Nature, that North Node right now for the next 1.7 years is going to be enhanced. There will be aspects within us that awaken our connection to that, to this, the element structures of the planet and the cosmos that we each are made up entirely of, except for that spark of soul that animates us, that's a whole nother ball game. Believe it or not, very important. So let's move ahead to Friday, because that's the next time I see anything dynamic happening. You can see that the Mars and the Venus are traveling quite close together. What I'm looking at right here now is I want to pay attention to this Mercury finally coming back for the third time across Pluto. And let's go get back to my notes, see what we have. The mysterious, that would be Mercury, dips in and stirs the contents of the cauldron as Mercury conjoins Pluto for the third time exactly on Friday. where do you suppose that stimulator of curiosity is going to wander within the depths of the plutonic soup? Some are terrified of altering their trajectories into the unknown territories of Pluto's beckoning. Pluto's response is, are you not ready to die? This really can mean the time has arrived for you to relinquish your death grip on what you have defined as your support structure, as there are mysteries awaiting your participation just outside your fortress walls. I'm going to close the chart up now because we don't really need it much anymore. Confer if you must with your mystic parts. We all have them, maybe buried under layers of dust and forgotten soul directives. That Piscean 12th house avenue only awaits your interest to spring into life and awakening slumbering parts of you. Here's our Neptune and Jupiter in Pisces, asking us to, really pay some attention to that deeper realm of who we are. And as Carolyn Casey would say, cooperators are standing by. When was the last, or is this the first time that you made contact with the energy beings responsible for assisting with your soul growth? You didn't think you were doing this all on your own, did you? While they don't directly interfere with your soul lesson plan, they can be helpful in showing you the larger matrix you have been and are willing always to be a part of. I keep receiving the message from the celestial chorus, our planetary buddies that are always in contact with me in particular, because as an astrologer, that I don't need to come up with hard, specific answers for us as we consider the astrological matrix, but more the message that they're telling me is I need to keep stirring the pot with questions, moments of ponder upon which we can meditate and we can journey and we can consider the ramifications of just what is it that we're doing? And might there be some value in paying attention to the messages that the planets are attempting to awaken us to? We, planet Earth, are one of those planets and are in this conversation. And there's a wholeness factor that is present that we either have the choice to participate in or go on our merry way. It is always the fact free will is the ultimate determining factor in how we will live our lives. So how free do you allow your will to be? Is it a devil-may-care attitude that really just takes every day in stride, doesn't care about anything else? Or might there be an inkling of the soul that animates this human vehicle you are currently using and has a concern for the larger matrix within which we all dwell? Questions. I'm not going to give you the answers because you already have them in you, but you might have to dig for them. That's all I have for this week. I will be back next week, probably with more questions. We will see you then. Ciao for now.